Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 operating budget update. This evening, we're going to be having a public hearing first, which is why we're seated up here at the dais. And if any folks who have the blue card, if they could go to the podium over here after we have some opening remarks. And then following all of the public hearing comments, we'll be moving down to the work session area in the front. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Dr. Lockard.
Thank you, President Savigny. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out. We value your feedback. And this is the second opportunity for public to give public comment on our proposed operating budget. Mr. Hartlove is going to provide a brief update. And then after that's complete, Mr. O'Neill will read names of folks who have submitted blue cards to speak.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Lockard. What we're going to go over tonight is just the changes from the last time we met. And there has been some additional information, and I think we've said at the beginning of the process, as we have additional information on the budget, we would get that information out to you. So, since we last met, the governor's budget was released. We've had time to digest that and understand what the impact is for CCPS. And so we have a revised state non-restricted revenue number, and that estimate it's still an estimate, but it's a more revised estimate. We're at $135,961,955, and again, that's based on the release of the governor's budget. That's a $2.3 million increase, and that equates to a 1.74%. What drives the state formula? There are three main factors, those being enrollment, inflation, and then wealth. Enrollment and inflation we've known, and we anticipated the growth in enrollment of 145.5 students, which is helpful to our funding. The inflation adjustment is also helpful, the 1.2 inflation adjustment. The last bullet there is good news and bad news. The good news is that Carroll's wealth per pupil has increased, and that's a good thing for the county in general. It's increased at a greater rate than the total state wealth per pupil, and that results in less of an increase in state revenue than we anticipated. And the state's formula is wealth adjusted, so the way it works is as your local wealth per pupil goes up, the state funding is adjusted down. So they tried to equalize funding for students across the state. So that's what's happened there. Other revenue, just as a reminder, other revenue we're still at the same place. We're still very happy with where we are with county revenue. We are looking at a 3.126% increase in county revenue. We're very, very happy about that. And all the other items related to expenditures and so on remain the same as when the last time that we discussed the budget. So just to kind of summarize the change in revenues that we're now estimating, in the superintendent's proposed operating budget, we have included an increase in revenue of $9,666,080, or 2.88%. Our revised estimate now, based on the information from the governor's budget, is that our revenues will be increasing at an amount of $8,492,847, or 2.52%. That results in a $1,173,233 estimated revenue shortfall. So that's where we sit. Those are the changes since the superintendent's budget has been rolled out. With that, we have our next steps. The next step here is to have our hearing. So if you would like to participate in the hearing, fill out a blue card. The blue card's at the back table. Bring them up to Mr. Neal up at the front, and we will have the hearing. After the hearing is finished, we'll have a work session, and we will discuss the budget, including the new revenue information that we have now. And then a week from tonight, at the regularly scheduled February 12th board meeting, the Board of Education will adopt their budget request that then goes over to the county and really starts the next step of the budget cycle. So with that, we will we will begin to read names.
I need to relocate here so that the mic is live. So I'll call the cards in the order I believe we received them, and when I call your name, please come to that podium. Are you running the timer? And the information staff will run the timer on the screen in front of you so you can see the time. And the first speaker is Charlene Zito.
You ready? Good evening, board members and Dr. Urquhart. I'm very pleased and very blessed that we have people that on the board that really care about the best education for our children. But is that what's really happening? Does every child have access to education? A new teacher in the system makes $48,000 a year. They work 190 days. It is theoretically possible, after taxes, retirement, and health care insurance and everything, that they make $15 to $16 an hour. That no teacher works 8 hours a day. Most teachers I see work 10, 12 hours a day. A teacher with a degree can make the same amount of money as a person who's working for a fast food restaurant. I've seen teachers at school 2 or 3 hours after duty time. And that's not counting what they take home. Yet, we ask more of them. There are students in the regular classroom that have issues that alone cannot solve. It leaves them discouraged, frustrated, and thinking the county doesn't care about them. We need more staff than 6 special education resource teachers. It's a good start, 1 psychologist, but it's a drop in the bucket. It's like having a child put a finger in a bucket of water with a hole in it, and the water still leaks out. There are many children in our system with real issues out there, and we do not have the resources for them. If you're a psychologist and you have 20 kids and you're over 2 schools, what do you do with the meetings, observations, keeping up on paperwork, write the plans, how much time do you really have to do with students? If you're a behavior specialist and you have 20 kids between 2 schools, how much time do you really have to work with those students? If you're an instructional assistant and you work for the school system, and you have 3 or 4 autism children and you're in a special, in a related special, what do? What child do you help? Mrs. Henn, when she came last week, she said, or the last time, she said about mental health. I could give a good reason for that. My son's probably a good reason for that. He had a math teacher that was really made him feel like he was a piece of dirt. He tried different things to do to get things possible to get his health way and to do things, and it wasn't possible. There was no help out there. I finally looked at him and said, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "Mom, I just can't find anybody to help me in the system." And I went, and they said the same thing. They just gave me excuses. So we really need to have you do something about staffing and then taking care of our teachers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Melanie Jensen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to address the concern that you have heard from teachers, parents, and concerned citizens in our community. I've been a special education teacher since 1980. What I've witnessed in those 40 years of teaching is the ever-increasing demands of teaching coupled with the administration and paperwork demands and with less and less time during the school day to do it. On any given day during our contractual day, a special education teacher is expected to do more than is humanly possible. Let me share with you what that looks like in one of my colleagues. She's to make lesson plans for each individual student in each identified IEP area for first grade math, writing, and phonics, second grade reading comprehension, writing, phonics, math, fourth grade math, reading comprehension, writing, and phonics, and fifth grade reading comprehension, writing, and math. While she does get her 30 minutes of lunch, which is often a working lunch, she only has 45 minutes of daily planning. If you think about the 14 different lessons she has to plan for, that means she has just about 3 minutes daily to plan for each. But wait, where's the time to do the 5-day before paperwork for the 8 IEP meetings scheduled this month? She has an 8-page document to guide her with how many documents have to be completed and work samples, etc., that have to be gathered depending on the type of meeting it is. There are 17 plus different types of meetings that we have to be able to plan for. Then all the paperwork for the day of the meetings and the 5-day after paperwork. She's also responsible for knowing how to do all the 26 plus assessments. The assessments then have to be scored, reports have to be completed for each, as well as an educational assessment report to summarize the individual assessment reports. We're required to keep data for all the students we teach for every subject area we teach them and report on that data at least once a quarter, and in some cases more often than that. Our contractual day starts at 8:30, classes start at 9. My colleague has planning from 8:30 to 9:15, then teaches from 9:15 to 11:45, has a working lunch, and teaches from 12:15 to 3:30, which is when students are being dismissed. Then she has from 3:30 to 4 to try to get schoolwork done, catch up with the general education 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers, to co-plan lessons, talk about curriculum, giving assessments, etc., and plan and schedule IEP meetings. Ever heard of being out of compliance? It's why you don't see more of us here tonight. Many are home working on completing the paperwork I told you about. It's impossible to get it done during the school day with everything we're required to do within the deadlines that come with each task. To be out of compliance with paperwork could mean loss of state funds, which means we could lose our jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for considering hiring 6 more special educators, but we need more. More teachers means less students on our individual teaching caseloads, which means better quality teaching, special educators who have a home life, and paperwork which is in compliance. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have written comments that you're drawing from, the board will accept those as well if you wish to turn those in. The next speaker is Robert Herpsommer.
Bob Herpsommer from Finksburg, working at East Middle. Good evening, Dr. Lockard and board members. First, I want to thank you for including 6 additional special education positions in this year's budget. I appreciate the acknowledgement of the need for more support, but I don't think anyone really understands the gravity of the situation for special educators. Over the years, the amount of paperwork for special educators has just exploded. This is an example of an IEP that we used to use years ago, 1 page, with 1 page for a sequence log, which includes sequencing achievement on objectives. 1 page. Now most of the IEPs are somewhere between 30 and 40 pages. And if attorney gets involved in it, it goes much higher. IEPs are just one part of the paperwork that special educators have to fill out and work on. We also have to work on amending IEPs, behavior plans, alternate assessment forms, model consent forms, prior written notices, IEP meeting attendance signature pages, excusal from IEP meetings, notice and consent for assessments, evaluation reports, and determination of initial eligibility. 5-day rule parent response form. I could go on and on. There's 6 pages in our folders that lists the different forms that we need to include in an IEP folder and for special education students. That leads us to end up with a huge amount of paperwork for each student. Most of the IEP folders look something like this. Some of my students, they have actually another folder that goes with this, like 3 stacked high. This is the kind of paperwork we're working with. However, the volume of the paperwork is not the only cause of stress for special educators. The real cause is the pressure of needing to be compliant with federal regulations, state regulations, as well as local policies and procedures, which are regularly being changed and updated. If not compliant, we risk having to implement a corrective action plan or possibly a due process hearing. I think the special education department at central office here is probably the only department with its own supervisor of compliance. All of this need to be compliant takes place at the same time you're needing to plan for, and teach your classes. In my case, teaching physical science, life science, earth science, academic development, a flex class, and a homeroom each day, as well as dealing with the students who might be in crisis that day. I know that the budget is tight and everything cannot be done at once. My hope is that the board comes up with a plan to solve the special education needs of the county and comes up with a way to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim Robison.
Good evening, Dr. Lockhart and board members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Kim Robison. I've been a special educator in Carroll County for 33 years. I would like to thank you for the 6 special education positions that you've asked for the 2021 budget. I would also like to share some stories that I've heard in the last few weeks. One is about a special educator that happens to be pregnant and is due very soon. She was at school and having some health issues one day, and she called her doctor. The doctor asked her to see her within the hour and told her they might go ahead and send her on to the hospital. The teacher asked her colleagues, because they were there with her, if they thought the hospital would have a place to charge her computer, because she wanted to work on her paperwork while she was there, as she had IEP meetings the next day and paperwork that needed to go out. In another case, the teacher became ill at the end of the holiday break and had to be hospitalized at the beginning of the new year. She had 2 IEPs that were 95% finished that she'd been working on throughout the holiday and prior to being hospitalized. The teacher could not return to work right away. A day or so after coming home from the hospital, she received an email from central office that 2 IEPs were out of compliance. Please keep in mind the email was very positive and not in any way punitive. The special educator called central office right away and explained the situation, told the supervisor that they would be completed either that day or the following. These situations are real. I know because I'm the person in the second story. The point is, we cannot be expected to live our lives by 5 days prior to the IEP meeting and 5 days after the IEP meeting deadlines. I realize you don't have control over federal mandates, but what you do have control over is how the workload is distributed and how it could be organized between our case management duties and our instructional duties. And please consider adding more special ed positions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Tony Roman is our next speaker.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members. I appreciate the opportunity once again to come before you, and I want to first recognize the sea of red here and let you know that all these people who have all these other things to do find it valuable and important to be able to be concerned about the budget you're going to be discussing tonight, because it is partially their future. And the stress and the time and effort that you hear about tonight is real. And I know that you want to be able to make the best possible situation. Now we're asking you to not just want it, but actually do it. To actually have the moral fiber to be able to say, we need to ask, we need to work with our other parties to do the best possible so that our system and our children receive the best possible education they can. We can no longer wait for people to have good hearts, but to have proper spirit to go forth and demand and request and work for the things that are needed so that our teachers and our students are able to do the best possible situation. These people are here to be willing to work with you. They put in the time and the effort. We will stand by you and be able to help you as much as we can. Talk to legislators, talk to the commissioners, talk to the General Assembly to be able to get the best situation possible for everybody working together. We need that help. I am asking particularly for support from Manchester Valley High School, where I presently work at right now. We are in a situation where we need an additional assistant principal to handle the volume of work that our 2 assistant principals are dealing with right now. We have students with massive behavioral issues, and our 2 assistant principals and our principal are just running and working as hard as they can to be able to handle this, but it is just a squirrel just on that wheel going all the time. And we need that support. We need that additional position to be able to give the students and the faculty the support and ability to be able to make that school work to the function that it can. And we're asking you to find the shift, what it takes to be able to give that position over so that we can be able to function to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Jaeger is the next speaker.
Good evening, Superintendent, members of the board. My name is Donna Jaeger, and I am an early childhood special educator at Hampstead Elementary, working with the PREP program. And the PREP program has our youngest school-based students. I have 34 years experience, and I am a national board certified teacher. During my 34 years in Carroll County Public Schools, I've seen many changes in special education. Some have been positive and exciting. Hearing 6 new teachers are coming is positive and exciting, while others have increased the workload and negatively impact and affect the classroom instruction. When I began, a typical IEP took about an hour to prepare, was written at the meeting on triplicate paper. I was maybe a little past you. You separated it, you stapled it, you handed it out. It was all done, no paperwork to finish. Fast forward to now. A typical IEP for me is 26 to 40 pages long. It takes 5 to 10 hours to prep the draft documents, approximately an hour to prepare them for home, project for the meeting, and send to the homeschool representatives. The meetings run anywhere from 1 to 3 hours, depending on the number of items on the agenda. An additional 3 to 4 hours is needed to wrap up the paperwork, proof and close the documents, print and prepare them for home, and upload into the system. It doesn't include any of the extra forms or tasks, such as giving the formal assessments, and the 5+ hours it takes to write the report. Reaching out to community settings for input into the student's progress, seeking parent input, and typing up excusals, release of information, completing Carroll County Public School paperwork, which is not mandated by the state, and transportation forms. Even with the generous paperwork day, which I thank you for, I still spend hours of my time before and after school and use my planning time to complete the IEP process, which means I work late and I take planning home. In addition to managing the IEP paperwork, I am required to have well-developed, curricular-based, and developmentally appropriate lesson plans with posted MQI goals that are kid-friendly, which means pictures, which takes longer because my students don't read. I am expected to apply research-based strategies and programming in my instruction that is appropriate for my students who are held to county standards, even though some are still functioning below 24 months. I have to handle toileting needs, mobility, provide carryover of therapy goals, and have to carve out time for collaboration from my planning time or my own time, which translates to working late hours, taking work home, and juggling the multiple expectations and how to prioritize. This is frustrating because I love working with my students and their families. I enjoy collaborating with families and colleagues, and I find I grow through these relationships. But I'm only one person, and beyond my job, I am a wife, a mother, a grandma, a daughter of an aging parent, a church member, and a friend. My occupation should be rewarding and be a part of my life that's rewarding, but it shouldn't overrun it. If this is my story as a 34-year-old veteran teacher, 34-year veteran teacher, I'd like to think I was 34. Imagine what a newly hired teacher feels. The stress of juggling home and work, the frustration in getting through all the paperwork and feeling like you cannot get the entire job done, even when you're taking 10 to 20 hours from your personal life. So I ask you to consider additional staffing.
Thank you. Tricia Galanakis is the next speaker, and I have one card after this. So if there are any other folks in the room who want to speak, please take a minute now to fill out a card and pass it forward, please.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I want to thank you for adding the 6 special education teachers. From 4 to 6 is a nice move, not enough, but nice, and I just beg you to please at least leave the 6. And these positions will support these 4 pillars, because if that's really what we're about, then that's what we have to think about. The additional positions will allow for some collaboration time, not enough, but some, between the general educator and special educators, which will strengthen the instruction provided not just to students with disabilities, but for all learners. The collaboration that takes place now on the fly or after the duty day isn't effective or efficient. The increased positions will allow for special educators to work with less grade levels and therefore have an increased opportunity to be experts in the curriculum that they are teaching. The additional positions will also allow collaboration between the special educators and the related service providers to enhance a seamless delivery of services to meet those IEP goals and objectives which are legally mandated. It addresses the pillar of community. The additional staff positions will address the workload of special educators, which will allow more time to provide concise IEP data to families, which will then enhance the generalization of those skills that the students own, both within their family and within their community. Our obligation is they are community ready, ready for employment, and without that collaboration between family and school, it's not going to happen. It will build the workforce pillar. It will enhance employment opportunities. People know what's going on. You can go somewhere else, make more money, and do less work. Case management is not taught in college. So if we have more positions, it will allow new staff to develop the skills and knowledge they need so that they can be efficient and effective case managers to increase compliance. In addition, it will address the workforce because people will be working with fewer grade levels and have the opportunities to attend professional development that align with each curriculum taught, rather than just the one you happen to be available to go to. It will also allow for retention of overburdened staff by addressing the workload and the inequity in planning time between elementary special educators and the other staff in the county. It will address the environment pillar. The overburdened special educators, especially at the elementary level, who fulfill 2 jobs, special education teacher and case managers, they have to do both jobs and they're provided the least amount of planning time in the county, so we could work towards improving their health. It will also provide collaboration time for all staff. All staff is working with those challenging students, everyone from a cafeteria worker to a bus driver to an instructional assistant to a general educator. And you will address the health and the safety of each student and staff member if we can provide for collaboration time where we can securely meet the needs of each student and allow them to progress. Thank you.
Final speaker of the evening is Kelly McDonough. Last but not least.
Absolutely. I want to address a few ideas that I think the majority of us can agree on. My comments don't specifically address special ed teachers, but I want to talk about kind of mental health, but I think that we can agree that when we're talking about mental health and specifically our employees, that our special ed teachers' mental health is in trouble. At the beginning of the year, we would talk about how every week there was a special ed teacher in our building who was in tears. Well, we've moved on from that, and Monday I had a third-year teacher who was hysterical because she couldn't get the copy machine to work. And so it's moved on. It's not just our special ed teachers. We just have general ed teachers losing it. So here's, I think, what we can agree on. Most of you, given the opportunity to wave a magic wand and unlimited funds, would choose to pay the employees of CCPS what we actually deserve. I think we could all agree, too, that money doesn't make you happy, but not having enough money to meet your needs certainly makes you miserable. And the people who know me know that I say I learned this the hard way because I was in a very unhappy marriage to a very rich man. So I know that money does not make you happy. We know that the recession ended a few years ago, and thankfully the board has been able to fund incremental salary increases during the last 2 contract cycles, and we even were able to get 1 makeup step for the educators. However, I have never, ever heard any teacher ever say, "Oh my God, I can't believe how much money I am making." And roughly 1/2 of our students are coming to us having experienced some sort of trauma, which takes many forms, as you know. It is understood, however, now that working with these students, with people in trauma, has far-reaching effects on those educators in the form of secondary traumatic stress, and that's kind of like PTSD. Teachers end up withdrawing from their family and friends, feeling unexplainably irritable, angry, or numb. They have an inability to focus. Sometimes they feel hopeless or isolated or guilty about not doing enough, struggling to concentrate, being unable to sleep, overeating, not eating enough, and persistently worrying about students when they're at home, even in their sleep. So this affects everything. And to top it off, they're dealing with financial stress, maybe a second job. It's a bad combination. We need more mental health resources for students, but we need them for the staff too, training on how to deal with these kids in our classrooms. But you can help alleviate the financial stress for your employees by making sure they're fairly and competitively compensated. Money does not make you happy. However, being strapped makes you stressed. Money isn't everything, but not having it is.
Finished. Thank you, Kelly. Speakers who signed up for this evening, thank you all for being here. For those of you who spoke, Superintendent Lockhart and board members, that concludes the public participation part of the hearing.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming out for the public hearing portion. We'll all now come out in front and move on to the work session part.